good guy, I think.
Talk to me like.
We never did anything.
When you got in the Army,
The Outsiders, Time Won't Let Me. WHRM.
Ben Frank. There's so many things I still know some.
you're over here in my car.
I know.
Plastics engineer for 50 years. That's why all his parts are perfect. It's just.
Well, you were only in start the federal.
Not yet. Y'all were playing on.
Joe, man, it's so great to see you.
We were playing
Turntable. This one?
I think the man's talking about working in the coal mine. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to our weird broadcast this morning. We have all kinds of stuff going on, but most of all, we want to tell you to go buy our special products. Our good sponsors, Fall Wine.
Well, he's gonna be another hour.
Joe Alloy, we work together.
I see Joe there. All right, did that correctly. Let's see if I can do this. Did you really? At home?
Isn't it cool they've got Joe's booth back here?
Yeah.
Did you know him?
I knew Philip. His son. That's who I went with.
But with this, if I can find Mr. Chris Johnson to give us an invitation for lunch, and we can begin.
Let's pray. Father, we just thank you for this day and the opportunity that we have to gather together with our colleagues, and we thank you for this beautiful day that you blessed us with to do. We just thank you for the food that has been prepared for us, and as we eat this food, Father, we just pray that you would nourish us with it, that you might make us strong, that we might be strong servants for you. And most of all, we thank you for our salvation through your Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let me go ahead and introduce our leadoff speaker, Mr. Chris Johnson, WKLF 95.5, The Peach. And this incline, it's got formats of Southern Gospel and Oldies. I'll let him get into the details of that. My understanding is he's been a broadcast engineer. He graduated from Chilton County High School, got his bachelor's in education from Athens, and then worked in education for a while, as well as doing radio work. He began his radio journey as a teenager in his hometown station of WKLF. So I'll let him go ahead and make any other introduction remarks he wants, and he is now our lead-off, and we'll have the usual format of once he's relinquished the mic, we'll start trading stories and getting comments from the audience at large. All right, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it. What an honor it is to be here with these folks, let alone to be able to speak to you. Feel very unworthy to be in your presence. But I don't know about legend, but I'm old, so if the old part qualifies you. 71, almost 72 gets me there, I guess. I got some important stuff to tell you. Most of my friends kept asking what you're going to talk about. I told them I said it's going to be a tell-all. I'm going to tell all about all these folks. I'm going to tell all the stories about Jim and Skip and some of these folks. So we'll have all that documented. I know you probably want to take notes, so I brought some pens to give away, so y'all pass those around. Yeah, I always bring giveaways when I speak anywhere. You're always supposed to have gifts, right? If you give gifts, you get gifts. So give him. No.
I enjoy food, guys. Y'all take care. I enjoy food.
God love you. God love you, mate. That just proved God loves everybody. But anyway, I am Chris Johnson, and I've been in radio forever. It got in my blood just like it did everybody in this room. I mean, it is a disease that you cannot get rid of. There is no cure for radio once it gets a hold of you. As a teenager, I used to listen to the radio all the time. I spent many hours in Clanton. We could only pick up WKLF, which was our local station there in Clanton, 1,000 watt, was 980 AM daytimer, back before FM really became popular. And they did play the kind of music that I liked to listen to as a teenager, so I'd sneak in where I could listen to Big Bam in Montgomery had the better signal in Clanton, and BOK out of Birmingham had the other signal, and that was about it. You had 740 and 690 and 980, and to get 690 and 740, you just about had to take a little transistor radio and walk over to the front yard next to the power pole and hold it near the ground wire so you could get a signal to be able to listen to it. So I listened to many hours of that in the yard and in the house on cable radio, tube radio. You could get both of them pretty decent. Spent a lot of time skipping school listening to Joe Rumore on 690. Always listened to him if I was out of school sick, and just radio in my blood. Dreamed about being in radio. Got hooked into electronics at a real early age. My dad gave me a soldering iron for one of my birthday presents, and I got a little Panasonic 101 electronics kit for Christmas, and built my first little crystal radio and picked up WKLF, hooked to the gas pipe on the heater. And probably wasn't a good place to hook it, but it made a good done. But anyway, kind of got me started. Mom said I stuck the keys when we lived in Birmingham when I was about 2 or 3 years old. She said I stuck the car keys in the outlet on the porch at 3 years old. And that's where I got charged, I guess, with electronics, electricity. But anyway, I've always enjoyed it. Got around CB radio, which moved me into ham radio, and like I say, got my start with radio. Basically, there was a guy at KLF named Bain Hill that did the sports, and we did a lot of Little League baseball. And I happened to be up in the booth because I knew how to hook the PA system up for the ball field, and wound up doing PA announcer for it and keeping the little scoreboard thing. Bain let me give the score every now and then, or say what the count was or something. I guess that's probably the first time I ever had my voice on the radio. And then, of course, back then, radio wasn't automated. It was live. You had to have somebody all the time. Of course, we had all kind of Sunday programs going on. And Jack Dennis, the owner of the station, then hired me to work part-time and did some of those Sunday afternoons there with getting the preachers on and off in the studio and playing the reel-to-reel pre-recorded programs. And we had one reel-to-reel player in the studio, and you'd have 3 reel-to-reel programs back to back, and you got a legal ID to get changed from one to the other. And we'd queue them up and put them on 2 reels, so you just snatch 2 reels off and stick 2 reels on and hope everything didn't get tangled up. So some of y'all remember some of that. Any of y'all ever done that? I thought so. Had a lot of fun back then, and always dreamed about wanting to be on the radio. There's a fellow named Robinson, Dave Robinson. Some of y'all might have heard of Dave Robinson before. Dave, bless his heart, put up with me. I'd go out there and sit for hours while he did his shift. He's the one that told me how to run the control board, told me how to say W instead of W. All the important things, supposed to pay 2 females back to back, and just the general radio broadcasting rules. And every now and then he'd let me do the weather forecast, read the weather, and that was a big kick, when I get to go back to production and record the weather on the cart, and he'd sometimes play my weather. So anything to get on. And AM was king then, you know. We had FM running back there, but it wasn't doing anything but television music. And you know, getting on AM was an awesome experience. And Dave put up with me. And I've always tried to. I know a lot of people get aggravated when somebody curious comes into the studio and wants to see how things work and want to know how things work. That's where I got where I'm at. From somebody having enough patience to let me watch what they did and learn what they did and answer jigging stupid questions for me. And Dave did that. Dave's gone on to be with the Lord now, but he took me by the hand. He had dreams of becoming an engineer and working at a big station. I had dreams of becoming an engineer, and that was kind of my thing more than I loved to DJ. I wanted to be a DJ, but I love engineering. And when something happened, like time to change the tubes, we had an old Yates 1G, used 833s, beautiful tubes. I mean, this day and time you don't get to see anything in radio stations. Little boxes of FETs, they don't do nothing but smoke sometimes, and you don't want that to happen. But the old 833s used to have that nice orange glow, and man, that flicker with modulation, if it was getting just right, it'd have a little blue flicker in there along with it. Frank remembers that, I'm sure. Just, you know, something to look at. You could tell it was actually breathing. It was alive. And those are the good old days of radio. And that's where I kind of got my beginning. And so I encourage, if you're still involved in radio, if somebody hangs around you, spend some time with them, especially if it's a younger person. Because our breed's dying out, folks. Look around the room. You know, we're all legends. That means we're all old. And so our breed's dying out fast. But if you find somebody's intercourse, you know, our breed's not only dying out from age, it's dying out from technology. Because now you got AI making commercials, you got automation systems that run in stations, and it's you know, we're kind of a thing of the past. And I tried to slow down a little bit. I was blessed. I was started a business not too far out of school, a communication shop. We still did business. I started in 1978, JW Communications, with my partner Robert Williams. Robert's chief engineer for Little River up in the Tri-City area up there. He and I have been partners for 42 years, and we did two-way radio sales and service, and of course we were both ham operators, and then we did broadcast engineering. We started doing contract engineering all over the place. We had a pretty good record going there for a while. We never had a station that was off more than an hour and a half after we got on the scene. We held that record for a long time. We might have been low power, but we had them back on. But anyway, I love engineering. My specialty was more studio equipment, control boards, and et cetera, back when you had real control boards that you could work on. And Roberts was a transmitter guy, and of course two of us together made a decent engineer. But anyway, so that's kind of where I got started at. I had the opportunity to start teaching school. My old teacher that taught my electronics at high school at the Career Tech Center retired and recommended me and said, "Do you think you'd like to teach?" And I never dreamed about being a teacher, but I taught for 25 years to high school students, trying to instill the love of electronics and radio in them, and really enjoyed it. It was a calling. I found out that God put me on a mission field rather than a classroom, but it was fun. And I retired from that, and I still kept the two-way business going on the side, kept engineering. Most of these small stations, that's what I've worked for, mainly small stations. I'm actually chief engineer of 18 radio stations and 6 translators. So I'm looking for something to do in my part-time, if y'all got a part-time job anywhere. But most of them are little stations like Rob King, my partner over here from KLF. We're little small town stations, and you know, you can't afford a full-time engineer, and you can't, most of the ones I work for can't afford to do anything, you know. So I'm pretty good at rigging stuff together. I put transmitter back on the air with alternator diodes from Napa Auto Parts to get a screen circuit rectifier going. Some of you engineers, how many engineers actually are engineers? I know Frank is, who else is engineering, several of them. I put a transmitter back on down in my mountain buying station, 860 at the AMI, where agricultural meets industry. I've done my share of rigging. When the first time I came to this group, that old Raytheon sitting back over there, I spotted it the first thing when I walked in the door, needless to say, and I don't know if it was D or somebody walked back there, and I said, this thing looks familiar. And he opened the back door up on it, and I said, yep. I said, you see that resistor hanging right there that won't fit where it's supposed to mount? I said, I hung that in there. Back when it was over in Silicon. So, been around the block a time too, and I love radio. I love broadcasting. My daily stress reliever happens at 5 o'clock every day. On WKLF, I do the drive at 5, and I have a ball. I take live requests and have a good time. Y'all tune me in. You can go to thepeach.live. Invite you to tune us in. Most of our streams are set up with .lives. We don't do apps. We just do .lives. So you can go to thepeach.live and listen to rock and roll oldies 24/7. You can go to peachgospel.live and listen to gospel, Southern gospel 24/7. And you go to peachcountry.live and listen to classic country 24/7. One of my newer stations that I mentioned, I bought WAMI off. I'm moving it to Clanton. Just got a call sign changed, WAPC. We are Peach Country. And so peachcountry.live is streamed. That stream's already up, but waiting on the construction permit. Power's off. Everything's just about ready to go. The FCC will get it gear on. With that, I'll say Mr. King and myself on WKLF, on WAPC, on WPJN. We praise Jesus' name, Jemison 89.3. Y'all can get that almost in Birmingham. Get on the other side of the mountain, you can get it. And then me and my other partner that I mentioned earlier on WSMX down in Troy. If anybody's looking for a good station to buy, come talk to me. I'm ready to, that's my baby, and I hate to turn it loose, but it's time to put it out of the nest and let it fly. So, but I have a great crew down there. Scott Michaels, who was supposed to be here today. A lot of y'all know Scott Michaels. And Johnny King. Voices are on SMX along with Roger Allen, and we have good crew down there. Roger, I mean, y'all know Roger Allen. That is one amazing guy. How he does what he does with his disabilities is out of this world. He wanted to be here today, something awful, but couldn't make it. But anyway, that's kind of the little radio history of Chris Johnson and engineering and ownership, and dreams do come true. When I was sitting there with Dave Robinson, watching him run WKLF, I dreamed about being a DJ. Still can't spell it, but now are one. Dreamed about being an engineer when I watched Gerald Wilson and Johnny and some of them change tubes in KLF, and now are one. So dreams do still come true. And like I said, you guys get a chance to take somebody under your wing and show them some stuff, slow down a minute and take the time to show them, because that's our future. Anybody got any questions I can answer? You want to know why the sky's blue? So you don't worry, quit cutting grass. Very simple.
Do you have a moment from earlier in your career that you still think about or keeps you up at night, or if you could go back and redo?
Not really. I've had some experiences. One thing that Skip said I needed to share is WQZX in Greenville, 94.3. I went down there to work on that transmitter one time, and it really is not a good idea, guys, to work on high voltage on. When I was teaching school, that was one of the rules. You double check everything, you make sure everything's grounded, you got to work on high voltage on. I had a whole list of safety rules that I taught my students, and so I guess rules are made to be broken, right? So I went into Q94. Robert was coming, but he was going to be about an hour later than me getting there, and they were off. So I walked in and hit the play on button, and it lit up like a Christmas tree all inside. So I knew I had a high voltage short, and so I turned it off and tripped the breaker off. And this particular transmitter, a few engineers, bleeder resistors, of course, were bad and been bad for years. So we used to, we'd watch the plate meter to make sure it got down to below 1,000 volts or so. And then we'd open the back door, and the safety interlock had a shorting bar on it that would short out the plate voltage. And you'd hear it pop, and double check the meter, make sure it's reading 0, and go to work on it. Of course, the the other thing you're supposed to do, what is it, Frank? What's that little thing called? The Jesus stick. And I'm gonna tell you, they named it that because if you don't use it, you may meet it. And so I cut the, didn't have any plate voltage reading, and I knew I had a plate short, so I wasn't expecting any plate voltage. Cut the main breaker off, opened the back door, no pop, so no plate voltage to discharge. And so I get my little light and I lean over in there to see where the arcing was coming from, and I lay this arm on top of one of the filter chokes, this arm on top of the plate transformer, and this part of my arm laid right across the terminal of the filter capacitor, which was charged to 6,000 volts. Little hole in my arm here, knocked me back over on the floor, and I sat down, and the first words out of my mouth were, "Thank you, Jesus," because I knew that I was supposed to be dead. And Frank knows what I'm talking about, because that's those filter capacitors, full charge, have enough current, plenty enough current and voltage available to kill you. And so God just wasn't through with me yet. He wanted me to come speak to y'all today, I guess. So I sat back down over there, and I wouldn't do that again. It was a good experience, but I don't want to repeat that one again. And I sat there and I called the station owner, and I told Kyle, Kyle said, I just about killed myself. I said, you're going to be off there a little longer. I'm going to wait till Robert gets here before I start trying to fix this thing. And what was burned in two was the wire that goes to the safety switch and to the meter. And I didn't use the Jesus stick, so violated everything. But anyway, I called Kyle and said, I'm not going to have you back on for a little while. And about that time, this thing called an elephant sat on my chest. And I said, uh-oh, this ain't good. So I was on the phone with him. He said, you want me to send the ambulance? Because now I was out backside of Fort Deposit, which is out in the boonies, nowhere. And I said, no. I said, if what I think's happening is happening, I'll be dead before they get here. I said, I'm going to get in the car and I'm heading to Stabler Hospital. You stay on the phone with me and I'll keep up with where I'm at, and you know where to send the coroner and the ambulance, whichever. Got to the hospital, heart rate was all screwed up, and but everything worked out good from it. So yeah, I wouldn't repeat that experience again. Always use the safety procedures, and for sure use the Jesus stick. Now I was ready to meet it, but I'd like to take a few more of y'all with me when it's time to go. All right, anybody else? Mike?
Folks in my age group fell asleep with a transistor radio next to their ear.
Oh, me too.
Woke up with a dead battery. What is your outlook on the future of radio in general, but specifically good hometown radio stations?
What?
In that, but many young people that had your dream, go, I want to be an engineer someday for radio. What's the future like? I hope it's optimistic, but what's your honest opinion?
I don't know. I think we're going to have to flip a coin on that. That worries me. That's one thing that he's talking about staying up at night. That's one thing that worries me is where's radio going? Because one reason it worries because I got quite an investment into a radio station. But I am concerned about that, and Rob might have a little intern at KLF that he's kind of mentoring a little bit, and that's what's going to take, is get the folks around it and get them involved in it, because if you don't get in it, the bug doesn't bite you, but if you ever get in it, the bug still bites. That bug is still viable and still bites, I think, but automation has been the death of small town radio to some extent, and the big boys, and I don't know, probably slapping some of you in the face with the Cumuluses and the iHearts and the ones that have bought up everything. They've kind of taken the small town out of it, and that's the reason we survive at KLF, because we're a small town radio.
And you're still local.
We're still local. We still do the death announcements, and everybody gets up, turns on the death announcements, see if they dead or not. We still have the death announcements, and we still have local news where the singings are going to be, and we still do birthdays and anniversaries and those things, and since Rob and I purchased it back from Great South, we tried to get involved in some of the local things going on and do a few little remotes from different things going on here and there, and that's the livelihood of a small town radio station is that. And I still think there's a place for that in the major markets like Birmingham, if somebody would actually get back involved in it. So that's why I have so much fun with my Drive at 5 show every afternoon is, I take live requests, they call in a request, and I get the song on. If they got a dedication, I'll take it. And, pardon?
can't get what they get in Birmingham.
They can't get what they get in Birmingham. That's because you can't get a live, you can't call in a request in Birmingham. This is a station in Birmingham that you can call in a request to now, or a birthday, or a dedication, or anything else, you know. How many of y'all ever dedicated Catches You Can to the local police department? Yeah.
Real quick, you can do that at JLD, but you can call in for your birthday.
Yeah.
What have you. I wonder what you thought about the recent attempt to get AM off the screen completely in your cars because of EV issues, and I understand that the National Association of Broadcasters was decisive in turning that back.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But AM still has its importance, although AM is you know, degraded quite a bit. And the main thing that's degraded AM just interference. LED lights and computers and everything that eats AM alive. And the reason, if you want to know the reason why the car manufacturers didn't want to put AM in the dash of the car, it wasn't because they didn't want AM there. It's because they knew they were going to have to deal with the interference to the AM there. Because those little rocket buggies of batteries are interference central, and they create all kind of interference. But in reality, and here's where the reality set into them, and I think probably the commission pointed this out to them as well as NAV, is FCC Part 15 regulates how much interference something can radiate if it's your toaster. If you look at most every appliance you got in your house, it's got an FCC Part 15 sticker on it that says it meets the radiation requirements. Well, those EV cars have got to meet that radiation requirement. And so if they meet the radiation requirement, then they put AM radio in it. But if they don't meet the radiation requirement, AM radio is not going to pick up anything with static. It's kind of like the boy said, you know, what instrument you play, can't even play radio without picking up static. So that's the way that would be. So yeah, I think AM's solid in cars. I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see an expansion of the AM band. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Some technology's got to catch up with AM. Digital AM, I think, probably will be a viable thing in the future. The problem with digital AM is you can't do digital and analog at the same time. That's where the problem's going to come in. It's a transition, and some stations are going all digital because they've got FM analog translators to feed, and that's all they got the AM for anyway. But it's going to take a while before you've got things in a car dashboard that can pick up digital AM, just like HD on the FM. You know, there's probably, show of hands in this room. That's a pretty good sound. How many in this room have a HD radio in your vehicle? HD radio, a high def HD radio, FM HD. See, some of you don't even know what it is, and there's about 4 or 5 in here, and y'all got some high-end cars. That's the only reason you got it. You know, and that was supposed to be the salvation and create all the stuff for radio, and the only thing it's done is create something where they can put an analog translator and feed it with one of the HD 2 or 3 or 4s or whatever. Nobody ever listens to the HD. All right.
Thank you so much. A couple of things. One is Pam has to introduce Joe Rumore's niece, Harry Rumore, Leo. Is there anybody who has a question for her? She sounds like she just declined. Or do you have any comments you'd like to make to the group in a way of recollection or anything of that nature?
Thank you for asking me to. We're just happy to be here and happy to be invited. We have Brother Dave is the one that told us about it. Do y'all know Brother Dave? Yeah, he's lost in traffic or stopped in traffic. But yes, we love radio and we're happy to be with y'all. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, and obviously, if you haven't already seen it, the studio is over there in the corner.
Hi, everybody. Bob Friedman here, WJLD, 22 years or so. But I want to tell people, this is just a point of information, since some people know I'm the director of the Birmingham Black Radio Museum. It's a project that's being built, was built at the Carver Theater in the basement. It's a 10-station, and they use the word loosely here, 10-station museum with lots of interviews, lots of oral history, lots of a fabulous history going back to William Blevins in 1938 on SGN, to J. Leslie Doss opening up his radio station in 1944, that's WJLD, and on and on and on. Some of you have actually seen the exhibit. Peter, who does work at the Jazz Hall Radio 91.1, was able to see the exhibit once it was built, and very, very excited about it. It culminates almost 25 years of research, oral history research, and about 2.5 years of actually building back and forth with the interior designers to get it right. There's a trivia program in it. It's loaded for as a great tourist attraction. Well, around 9 o'clock 2 weeks ago, I got a call from the engineer at Carver that we have a flood. And we had already opened, we had already done soft openings for various people, legislators, city council, blah, blah, blah. I ran down there, and I'm not going to drag out the details, but we made it without damage, except for a display case which can be rebuilt. But the carpeting had to be removed. We have a wheelchair accessible lift in the building, which makes the building ADA compliant, by the way. But also, we have a lot of older folks who are going to really enjoy this exhibit. If they can't get down there, we want to be able to make sure they do get down there. And so, ServPro, people who know ServPro know that when you have a flood, that's who you call. They have taken a lot of stuff out of the basement. They had to shut down 91.1 and take it apart. Pete was one of the people doing broadcasts there. So we're in that stage where we didn't lose stuff, but we lost time. So how did all this happen? It happened at a time when there was an intermission at a concert at the Carver Theater. During the intermission, everybody went to the bathroom. And that's when the cameras, fortunately, picked up that there was a leak in the basement bathroom coming out at our exhibit. Why did it happen? When the Carver was rebuilt in 2018, apparently the sewer pipe for all of the Carver was attached to a dead end, not to the sanitary sewer, which runs east-west down 4th Avenue. And that project was signed off by Capital Projects in the city. So there's a big deal going on about the fact that it's got to be fixed. It will be fixed. We will open up. We'll probably open up in the summer. Everybody here and then some will be given notification about when that happens, so we can make sure that you guys are involved in the tours. And certainly the Rumor family, very excited that you guys came. We won a Jefferson Award the same time as one of your brothers or fathers. Like the last Rumor who left us was Philip. Won it at the same time from the Jefferson County Historical Commission. And we also learned from my dear buddy at the Record Collectors, Charlie Bailey, that we have a small 78 of when Joe was at, where did Joe start? Who knows here? Where Joe first was on the air? Joe Rumor. What station?
I can't remember the call.
WJLD. That was where he was first. And we now have potentially some sound from that period. We're very excited about that. Anyway, that's what I had to tell you all. And anybody wants to talk further about it, I'll give you a card. You can come down and go online to the Birmingham Black Radio Museum. It's the only Black Radio Museum we've been able to find in Google. And there's 90 oral histories and about 1,000 pieces of ephemera.
It's the first and the oldest.
And that's from one of my board members, who happens to be a public historian, Professor Pam King from UAB. Again, thank you all.
Thank you, and best of luck with your launch. Let me see if Ms. Tinsley is available. Yes. Hopefully everybody knows of, if not in person, Ms. Sharon Tinsley who is the moving force behind the ADA.
Thank you, Richard. Well, if you show up late, the least thing you can do is bring cake, right? So we just sliced it up in the back, so please help yourselves. And thank you so much for including us today. And what a crowd you have. I think this might be the largest group I have seen here in all the years I've been fortunate to visit, so congratulations.
Did you have a conflict, a personal conflict last year, or some age? Never mind. I'm sorry. We'll keep the program.
We don't talk about big birthdays.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
But thank you.
Absolutely. Now, who is next? Who's got a story to share, or?
I've got an Uncle Joe story.
I want to introduce these folks.
Oh, well, then you introduce.
I wanted to drag these folks up here. We got Paul and Mary Rumore, and I'm just a nobody. But I was a little kid and listened to Joe Rumore as much as I could, morning, noon, and night, all the time. I tell the story about I would hang out we'd ride our bicycles over to the Homewood studio, sit out in the street listening on a transistor radio going, man, it's happening right in there. And if I had had any sense, I would have just knocked on the door and said, hi, my name's Jimmy, I'd like to see this. I bet they would have invited me in, just from the scope of it. But I was too scared. I mean, when you're 10 years old, it's weird. But I bet you've got some stories.
Paul will tell
And of course, you know the story. Joe was on the air for many years, and when finally, at one point, we came to an agreement that the museum was going to get his equipment, and they sent me over there with a pair of wire cutters and said, go cut that equipment out so we can bring it downtown. And it was like, it was almost a religious experience. I can't cut this. I can't cut any wires. So we rolled all the wires up. Everything is tagged and rolled up just exactly as it was in the basement at 507 Rumson Road. And that's it over there. But we appreciate you guys coming. And of course, Joe Rumore was just a very powerful influence in old Jimmy's life. That's where I got the radio bug. And I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but that was a story.
That's great.
And we're so glad y'all are here. There you go, Paul. You're up.
Thank you. Please do. It's better than what some people call it.
Oh man.
So, brief story. I try to make it brief. It's actually a long story. My family and I had a restaurant in Fort Walton Beach, Leo's restaurant. Some of you may remember it. One dark night, it was around midnight. We had closed the restaurant. We kept the bar open, and so we still had guests in the bar. And we were waiting to close up. Fella comes to the door, knocks on the door, storming raining. As you know, Fort Walton Beach is next to Eglin Air Force Base, so we frequently had military contractors come in and out of town. So this guy knocks on the door and says, hey, I just flew in, I'm hungry, hadn't eaten all day. Would you do me a favor and just give me a sandwich or whatever you could get? So I said, yeah, sure, come on in. Restaurant's closed, I'll fix you something. So I brought him in, he sits down at the bar, and we start talking, and I fixed him dinner. And we start talking about my family. We start talking about my wife, Mary, and her Uncle Joe. And this guy's sitting there, now he's from East Germany. He flew in to do a military conversation with these guys at Eglin. I don't know what all that's about. But he started listening to us talking about Joe Rumore. And he said, well, hell, I know who Joe Rumore is. And I said, okay, flabbergasted. And I said, how do you know Joe Rumore? He said, well, whenever I fly to the United States, we fly into Atlanta, and the first thing I do is get in my car. This is a testament to every one of you guys that's got this in your heart. The first thing I do is I turn my radio stations to WVOK. It's 690 in Atlanta. And he's listening, Mighty 690, all the way to Birmingham. and then to Florida. So this guy knew who everybody was, could name all the family members, knew Angie, Philip, Donna, Frank, knew the whole family. And we start talking, and as we're talking, the server, I had one server still there, and she walks up, she says, well, I know who Joe Rumor is. And I said, well, how do you know that? Now, this lady's been working for me for about 3 years. This never came up. She says, well, I was named after Angie, Joe's wife. And you've got to be kidding. You've been working here for all this time, and this never came up. So that's a testament to the stories and the profiles and the history of radio and how important it is. That it touches people's lives, and it's meaningful, and I hope it never goes away. So protect it as much as you can. Thank God. And thank you.
Any corrections?
I was gonna ask, is Golden Eagle syrup still paying you guys royalties?
I don't know if they are. They're not paying me.
Here we go, Sop and Syrup in the South. Thank the good Lord for Golden Eagle Sop and Syrup. You all antennas, friends and neighbors.
Well, I have full disclosure, I listen to 690 WTIX in New Orleans, along with WNOE. So my background is different, but I'm still trying to catch up. So, who's next? Who has a story or a question to ask or share?
But I do know Dave White, and when I heard Mr. McAnally tell me that Dave White was coming, everybody remembers Brother Dave. He texted me a couple. I hate to get up on stage here. He texted me during lunch when this gentleman was talking, and he said, "I've just hit the Alabama line." So I don't think he's going to make it to the meeting, but I had great memories of working with Dave, and I know that I know Joey Roberts from WSGN worked with Dave, and I really wish he could have been here. I was just picturing people like busting out into tears when he came through that door over here, but he's a classic. BRC, Birmingham Record Collectors, we were gonna have him speak a few years ago, and he didn't make it. So if he's crossed the Alabama line, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. He's almost here. He's almost back to Birmingham. But we call him the Birmingham Rave, Brother Dave. So hopefully he'll show up before we all leave.
So you get to pick the next victim.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Or we just pass it around the room and people identify themselves and perhaps tell a story. Or is there someone you'd like to pick on or select?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Orlando. Some of you may know me as Bill Blake, way back from WSGN. I was the last DJ on SGN before Frank signed us off and Katz Broadcasting brought us with WZZK. I'm still in the business, and I do have one story. The engineer that spoke earlier, does everybody remember Ben Franklin? Well, I almost killed Ben.
On purpose?
Well, fresh out of school, I had done news with Roy Wood Sr., and my first real gig was at WSMQ in Bessemer, Country Western. I have not had as good a time since, to be honest with you. But anyway, Ben was the engineer, and he was working in the tower one Saturday morning. Our job was to raise and lower power. Well, he didn't tell me that he was in the tower when I raised the power. He calls me, and I'll blank out the expletives, but he says, "You almost barbecued my boy." But once again, I didn't know he was up there, but knew into the business and know all of that. But Ben was a great guy. He really was. He gave me some of the best advice that I have ever gotten from radio, and I'll have to blink this off as well. He said, "Orlando, don't ever get where you think you're blank, don't blank."
I just want to thank you all for the opportunity of being here today. I was glad to see relatives I'm also part of the Joe Rumore family. My grandmother was Little Sousa, and her brother is Angie's father. So Joe Rumore helped me in radio as I started out at WVOK with Al Hodgins and the Brennan family, and then went on from there to WBMG television when they signed on, then came over to WSGN. And I'm just so thankful for the years in that and the opportunity to serve the Lord with the God-given talents I was given. And I told somebody one time, I said, I worked with a lot of great people, but the people who stand out the most to me is Dave Petty. Dave gave me an opportunity to work into radio, and Dave was probably one of the best writers of news stories I've ever seen, and he really helped me. Rich Wood, who's sitting beside me, gave me one of the best stories I ever got. He called me one day and said, the school's on fire. And it was. And we got there and we got to do a story on that, and that was a big time. It was good to see Barry today. He and I were together at WAPI. I was in radio and he was in television. And Barry had a dislocated shoulder, and I've never seen anybody could type as fast with one finger in my life. So it's really something. But I want to thank you for the opportunity of being here today.
Thank you, Joe. I'm Rich Wood, AKA Scotty Brink from WSGN, and I was in the news department before I was the all-night and music director. But I worked with Joe Alloy. I'll tell you this story. In the news department, we had no scanners, but we had live radio. Birmingham detectives, Birmingham Fire, Jefferson County Sheriff, State Troopers. We'd hear a call and put Joe on the case. Well, one night I was about 8 o'clock, I called and said, Joe, we got a call about a convenience store robbery in Eastlake or somewhere. He said, hold on. And he came back on, it's two-way radio. I said, what were you doing? He said, I caught a softball, we're out here playing, I'm in the right field. With his radio. So that's Joe, probably the best stringer in the history of broadcasting, Joe Allen. But it's a pleasure to see all y'all. Know some of you, going to be meeting some of you, but it's a fraternity, a sorority of people that are unique, maybe not a lost art, but certainly a group of people who certainly were bitten by the bug and really shared our interest in the community with everybody that could turn on the radio. So thanks for y'all coming, and nice to be here.
I'm Frank Giardina, formerly Frank Lewis. One of my most interesting moments was when I started in radio. My first station was WAQY 1220, twice as much as 610. That's what our motto was. Working for Tommy Charles and Johnny and Doug Layton. And I was weekends, they promoted me to middays, then they promoted me to program director because the other guy went off to another market somewhere. I'm driving in one morning and I hear Tommy Charles talking about John Lennon on the radio. Then he said, and we were a top 40 station. The Beatles were like number 1, number 3, number 5. They had about 5 or 6 songs in the top 40. We were playing. They get on the air and talk about John Lennon, and they read a comment about him saying that he was more popular than Jesus Christ. They banned the Beatles right then on the air. I get in there and I say, Tommy, what are we supposed to do? Play the rest of the records. And that was the end. We lost it, but they started a campaign to burn the Beatles records. they collected a ton of them, which filled up about 3 rooms on top of the 2121 building. And finally, one day, he came in and said, I guess this is over with. You can go ahead and start playing Beatle records. And I got one of the best Beatle collections there was.
I got a question. Somebody recently that I know went to Liverpool. There's a museum, obviously, of the Beatles, and they talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
In the Liverpool Museum.
They rounded me up one day when I was at JOX and did an interview to find out what I knew about it. I remember they did something like that at that museum. That was it. And another thing is, when I was in college, I worked with 3 other guys that were in college at Montebello, and we did part-time work at different stations, one of which was KLF. I had to fill in for a guy at KLF one Sunday morning. I had a cigar box there, had a list of names in there of the preachers that were to come in, and I was told not to put them on the air until they paid. One preacher came in, and I said, I need the payment. He said, well, I've got somebody that's going to bring it. I said, well, I can't put you on the air until you give me a payment. That's what my boss said. And anyway, he goes in the studio and he talks to several people because there was a big glass window there, and you had a piano and you had a pulpit in there and everything, and the transmitters were right over here, and you had so they went in there. He came back in. It was about time for him to go on the air. And I was sitting there, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I found some records, religious records to play. And he came in there and he says, are you going to put me on the air? I said, I don't have your money. He's, well, they'll be here right in the middle of the show. Go ahead and put me on the air. And I didn't know what to do, but I put him in audition. And I played records on the back. He went in there preaching. The lady was crying. The piano was banging and everything. It was going on. They did the whole show in audition. And I never got paid.
So many good people in this room, and a large portion of my life is revolving around all of these people in this room. As a matter of fact, the first day I ever went on the air on a local radio station was off of that brown and gray transmitter back there. Yep, is that a Collins, Frank, or is that Raytheon? Okay, the Raytheon transmitter. Yeah, I learned how to read the meters on that. And that was the happiest day of my life. Probably is the fact that I actually passed this test, and I got my yeah. And so went on the air from there at WMLS in Sylacauga, and then. But one of the great joys of my life, of course, is with the Rumore family. I got to work. Don Mosley's here with us. Big hand for Don at Sound of Birmingham. Like so many of you, I got to listen to Joe Rumore a lot when I was a kid, and always had aspirations of being on the air, and actually got to work with Joe and Duke, and met so many of the Rumore family. It was just one of the great joys of my life. As a matter of fact, when they cut Joe back from 9 to noon, he went on until 10:30, and then I had the luxury and the joy and the honor of taking over from Joe at 10:30 in the morning. From his house, he would say W, I would say V, he would say O, I would say K, the voice of Alabama and stuff, and then it went on from there. And I worked usually from 10:30 in the morning until sign off, and that could be as early as 4:45 in the afternoon or as late as 8 o'clock. Sometimes I work 8 or 9 hour shift. And, so the rest of it's kind of I'm losing my, okay. Yeah, exactly. Let's see, who am I now? But anyway, it's just great to be. Who?
Barry has the record, literally has worked for more radio stations than anybody else in the room.
Oh my gosh, that's probably true. I worked there for a bunch of them here, and had the joy of working with people like John and Rod Clark at Wide Radio. We could almost turn this into a wide reunion and stuff today. We got so many people here, but just want to thank everybody with the Alabama Historical Radio Society and what they do for us every year. And thank you all for being here. It's one of our things we look forward to every year. We're going to pass it down to
John McGivney, we worked at White Radio with Burt Frazier and Duke Rumor and all those guys.
My name is John McGivney. I got my start in radio at WAUD in Auburn. I worked at WJHO at Auburn, WFRI at Opelika, and came to Birmingham, taught school for a while, and worked at WERC at night, taught school during the daytime. And then I went to work at Wide, and I ended up at television at Channel 6 and Channel 42, and then I got into advertising. And that's my story. Now, I have some other stories I can tell, but I can't tell them in public.
Yeah, I'm Rod Clark. I had a long media career. My first 8 years were in radio. My first job was at working for Burt Bank in Tuscaloosa. Then I worked in Selma for Julius Talton in sales. I did do a farm show in Selma. I knew nothing about what I was talking about, but it was on the AP wire, so I read it. And then moved back to Birmingham, worked at WJLD. Came in one day and the owner had sold the other turntable, which was interesting. And the other thing, they owned a cemetery. The Johnston son did, and he got in trouble because he oversold the cemetery. So you had people at 6 feet, you had people at 3 feet. You got caught. I said, well, I probably need to upgrade my career here. And I was there about a year, and I went to work at Wide, and actually, they told me I got Duke Rumor's account list since he went to ZZK working for the Johnston. And so they handed me the sheet of paper, and there was $100 worth of billing on there. So I was on straight commission. I said, whoa, a challenge. But I made it, and I wound up as sales manager at WAPI, and after that, I was asked to join Time Warner Cable and start their local ad sales here in Birmingham. So retired from there 3 years ago. So, but what I learned in radio was very valuable to me in starting up cable ad sales, because I started with a legal pad, a pen, and a phone, and a good corporate support system. But they were very good to me. And what I learned about sales and operating and having a team was very valuable, especially the guys I worked with at Live. Because you walked in the door as a sales rep, and the news guy would stick his head out, how'd it go today? You turn the corner, and the traffic manager would say, you got anything for me? And you keep walking down the hall, everybody's asking you who you did, and you hadn't even got the sales manager yet. So I learned what a real professional broadcast operation was, and I used those experiences later. So thank you.
I'll have a VOK story that started my radio career. I was ripe age of 11 years old. I was coming to town with my father. We were coming up Highway 5. And we went right by VOK coming in. And we were going back home. I said, Dad, would you take me there? I want to go see what they'll say. I want to see if they'll let me look around. I want to see that big transmitter. And he said, okay. So we go in there. And I cannot remember the receptionist's name. This would be back in the early 70s. But she was always nice, and talked to her later. But Don Keith was there. Don here today?
I think you don't see Don.
Anyway, he was like 19 years old, and I was 11. And he showed me around. He showed me the transmitter. He asked me if I knew anything about radio. I said, well, I've been a ham radio operator since I was 5 years old. I got my novice license. And he said, oh, that's pretty cool. So he ends up taking me in to see Dan. Dan was on the air in the afternoons, Dan Brennan. And he showed me around the studio and showed me all the stuff. I said, maybe I want to do this for a living. And he says, well, let's start right now. So the next break came up, and instead of playing his stinger he had on the cart, he let me do it. And that's the first time I ever was on the air. And I said, you're listening to the Mighty 690 WVOK. That was it. I've been in it ever since.
Got the bug.
We have anybody who wants to volunteer in the back row before we switch to this side of the room?
Dollar bill.
I just want to say thank you again for all of y'all coming here, because this means so much to all of us every year.
And you know, when I first started coming to the Legends Luncheon, I was the young guy. We'd see all the guys from TV and radio that I'd grown up, you know, watching and listening to. And they, you know, moved on to the next phase of creation. But now I'm the old guy, and a lot of us are. But you know, the thing that reminds me when I hear these stories that's so amazing is how radio could get into your heart and soul. That Joe Alloway, I remember listening to him when I was going to high school, you know, in the car with my dad. We'd be listening to SGN, Don Mosley, Bob Berry, and all these people that I grew up listening, because, you know, Bob Berry is so much older than me.
It's true.
It is true. No, it's not. Joey Roberts, I mean, he was young. But it's amazing how radio would get into your life. You know, back then, we'd listen to radio so much more than I think a lot of people do now, of course, with all the distractions and the streaming and stuff. But radio became a part of your life. And a lot of these guys in here, I'm amazed how wonderful and the parts you've had in my life. I mean, I've worked with so many of you, and thank God some of you in this room, I appreciate what you did for me in my early career. It wasn't so much radio, but I could get marijuana from most of you at some point in time. And that was my good connection with that. And then, of course, Joe and Mary, I was honored and lucky enough to be inducted into the Country Radio Hall of Fame in Nashville a couple of years ago. Thank you. I still think there's a dollar Jill somewhere that's really mad at me. Joe Rumore's in there, and a lot of people don't know that. He and I think are about the only two Alabamians in the thing. So I was honored to be a part of that. And of course, Joe and Mary, we used to sit and talk at his restaurant and about the Rumores, you know, Duke and Joe and all of it. It was just amazing. So part of my life, and y'all are all a part of my life too, all the guys I've worked with and all these years. I do have another thing. We talked about, you talked about Selma. Who was talking about working in Selma? Yeah, Rod, you know, he and I worked together, I think in Tuscaloosa, didn't we, for a little while? And then in
ACT, and I was
I was at ACT, you were what, JRD? TBC, yeah, Burbank. And then I think in Selma, because I worked for Talton in Selma for a while, and well, let me tell you, I have an honor that I'm going to tell you about. It's not a good one. I'm the only guy that's ever done this, and it happened in Selma. I worked for Julius Talton. He had a great radio station right there in downtown Selma on Lauderdale Street, I think it was. And it was a beautiful building he had built, but the problem was it was all the downstairs was the offices and all of the studios, and there was glass everywhere. One of those old type stations where you could look through 5 rooms, you know, all the way across, because there was nothing but glass everywhere. It was a great design. It was a circular design, so all the studios were in the very inner core, and he kept everything sound insulated. And he was also a smart businessman, because you could, at night when the offices were closed, he would shut down the outer ring of, you know, air conditioning and heating, and just keep the core going where the people were overnight, and you know, and that was pretty smart. One stupid design though, he put the little kitchen area and the bathrooms upstairs. So you had to go up a pretty good little stairway to go upstairs to use the bathroom. You know, for those of you who played vinyl, you know how it is. You had to learn to do every biological function you had to do in life in 2 minutes and 12 seconds or less. Because records back then didn't go very long. You didn't have In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida and some of those, you know, Rick and the Edmund Fitzgerald, the bathroom songs, or the dope smoking song, or the sex songs. Anyway, the long ones, not many of them existed. So you had to learn to do everything pretty quick. Well, I was in there one night working, and I was on 7 to midnight, and on Saturday nights, they didn't have a guy come in at midnight because they shut the transmitter down at midnight and let the engineer do maintenance or whatever between midnight and 5 a.m. on Sunday night. So nobody was in there. It was just me. I was doing the night show. And a guy called in and said he wanted to hear a request. And back then you played them, and I had remembered seeing this odd album or request he wanted out of the blue in a room down the hall that was our library. It wasn't one of the current, so I thought, you know, I've got 2 minutes. I just started a song. I can get his song in before we hit the news. So I started the song, jumped up and ran down the hall, ran in the room where the records were all stored, and I tripped on those stupid plastic things they have so your desk chairs will slide on the carpet, and fell forward and hit my head right across here on a shelf. knocked me crazy. I mean, I saw stars, and I grabbed the album, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up, and I'm out in the hall, and there's a paramedic looking at me. And what had happened is I'd knocked myself out on the air live. I'd hit the shelf and started down the hall and just went out. Well, my 2-minute song ended, and people in Selma heard for about 20 minutes where the record was just at the end, just making that noise. They called the engineer or the station manager, and they called the paramedics and came. And I was laid out in the hall and had this huge goose egg and bloody place on my head. So the 2 paramedics checked me out. And they, of course, back then they just said, shake it off. And the engineer was playing records and stuff till I got up and I went and finished my shift, and then went home that night. So about a month later, I'm the only guy at that point in time that ever knocked themselves out live on the air. So a month later, I'm running late getting back to the station to do my shift, and I was starving to death, and I knew once I got in there at 6:30 or 7, I'd be stuck in there till after midnight, and I was hungry. So I made a fatal mistake. I went to Taco Bell, grabbed a couple of burritos, and got to the station. And of course, about 45 minutes into my first hour, nature says, you got to go to the bathroom, and it's not going to be good if you don't. So I'm thinking, I found the longest song I could find, 4-minute song or something. I threw it on, and I went. But remember, you have to go down the hall and up all these stairs. And I go in the bathroom, and I'm doing my business, and they've got a monitor in there, and I'm hearing the song, and I realized that this is going to be an extended moment in the bathroom. I wasn't quite done, and the song was about to be done. So I didn't know what I was panicking, because back then 1 second of dead air was horror. You didn't want that at all. And I'd already had it one time when there was 45 minutes of dead air because I was laid out in the hall. So I decided what I could do is I found a point biologically I could stop and run down those stairs and go start another song and come back up and finish my business. Well, the song started fading quicker than I thought, so when I went down the stairs, I still had my pants kind of halfway around my ankles, underwear and everything. Nobody's in the station, they're not going to see me. So I'm going down, and I tripped. And guess what? Knocked myself out, cold, with my pants and underwear around my ankles, laid out in the hall. Next thing I know, I'm opening my eyes, and the 2 same paramedics are there. They're looking down at me, and the guy said, what'd you do? And I said, I had to go to the bathroom and hit my head. He said, well, I'm telling you this now. Last time we came, you were knocked out in the hall. Now you're out in the hall almost naked. You knock yourself out again, you're going to die. Because we ain't coming. So I think I'm the only guy that's ever knocked themselves out twice in a month, all live on the air in any radio station probably in the nation. But thank you so much for letting me speak, and I love all you guys, all my friends and co-workers. I mean, Frank Lewis, he wasn't Giardina then, he was Frank Lewis when I started working at Kicks and ERC. He didn't fire me. A lot of guys in here didn't fire me, and I should have been fired so many times. So God bless you, and thank y'all.
Ron Conrad. He never can tell a story, can he? Good stuff. I wanted to tell you, first of all, in this group, in the other parts of the country, there's similar groups. I'm from Washington State. I started my radio career in my hometown of Spokane, went to Seattle, and there's a Northwest radio reunion that happens every 2 years that I fly out to, and it's the same deal. Guys, everybody who knew everybody who grew up, and so the same camaraderie exists because of this business and the love that you were talking about that we all have for it. The sad truth is, and it is a sad truth, local radio is a gravestone, basically. It's very, very sad. I was on Magic, when I came here in 1993, for a morning show on Magic 96, there was a live human being in that room 24/7. There was a local news staff, there was local traffic. The station was a monster. Today, there is no live human at all on that station, at all. It's all syndicated morning show, voice track middays, JT, the morning guy on our news talk station, tracks the afternoon, syndicated show. It's damn sad. because in another 20 years, I don't see that the groups that we have here today are going to be around, because it's damn sad. So my encouragement to anybody who's still on the air would be to be local as you can be. Every night break, you better let them know that you're in Birmingham, because otherwise you can be replaced. I felt honored to be there for 30 years. I had a great career. I'm not filled with regret. I'm disappointed it ended about a year earlier than I wanted to. But the fact that syndicated shows are all over the place just kind of bothers me. But a quick story that as we all know, Wink Martindale just passed. And a guy that I've mentored, a young guy who has really done well in the business in the Northwest, posted this on Facebook, and it's a great story I want to read to you. His name is Paul Hinkson. And Paul writes, I met Wink Martindale early in my career while I was interning at a station in Seattle. He came in to do an interview with the program director and morning host, Rob Conrad, promoting a new game show. Rob asked me to engineer the interview and record it so he could play it back next morning. Fair request, right? So when Mr. Martindale arrived, I welcomed him, got him settled behind the mic in the production room. Everything was ready, and Rob gave me the thumbs up to hit record. The interview lasted about 15 minutes. Rob and Wink were very happy with how it went and asked me to play it back. Now you can guess what happened. I rewound the tape and hit play. No sound, no levels, only silence. What? How could that be? I looked down in horror and discovered, I lost my place, hang on a second. Looked down in horror and only silence. How could that be? I looked down in horror and discovered I had reel-to-reel safe button engaged, meaning the entire interview didn't record. Wink chuckled, and he thought, and I'll just paraphrase it now, I was afraid that Rob's going to be very mad, and I took it in stride, and we redid the whole thing. Wink was cool with it, and wasn't a pissed off star at all. You know, it just went great. So that was my fun story to tell you today. Thank you all for welcoming me and being here. Thanks you.
Play a record or something. I want to change the batteries.
Request from the ADA. They're looking for potential nominees for the Alabama Broadcasting Association Hall of Fame. So if you have a nominee in mind, and then you can contact Sharon at this email address. And anything else you want to add to that, Sharon? Any qualifications or anything?
Well, we have criteria on our website, but basically it has to be a person who has spent a majority of their career in the business in Alabama. You don't have to be an Alabama native. You do not have to have worked in Alabama your whole life. But the main criteria is that you've been in Alabama for a large part of your career. And we have a list. Oh, thank you.
Qualification is that part. You just have to have been in Alabama for a great part of your career. And we have a list, but we want to continue to add to it. So every year a panel of people look at the list, and you know, there's no way in my lifetime we could induct all the people in this state in this business deserving. But we're trying about 5 or 6 at a time. I'm looking at Doc, Bill is in our, I always do this. Bill's in the class. Patty and Doc, I think we donated their medallions. They might be in that case over there. At least one of them is. And I'll look around the room to see if there's anybody else. But we would very much appreciate nominations for the Hall of Fame. And we present these awards at our conference in August. Just email me.
Any questions for Sharon? I'm going to put in a couple of plugs for the society, the host organization. And we are trying to do everything we can to preserve the history of radio, not just the equipment you see around, but obviously the people who make radio worth listening to and everything that really goes into it. So we also have the former Don Kresge Museum across the street in the Alabama Power Warrior, which is usually available for viewing during most work days, but on request we can get folks over there. Obviously Legends of Broadcast annual event, and we usually do it on the third Thursday of April, so we'll check our calendars and make sure we've got everything correct. We obviously have a very vigorous, rigorous board of directors, and I would say that one of the other major tasks we're trying to do, he was here last year, Harry Butler, who was the author of this first edition of the History of Alabama Broadcast Radio from 1920 to 1960. He was working on its successor, the second edition, a few corrections perhaps as the history became more evident, but unfortunately died, I believe, last June before he could complete it. So with the help of the family, we're sorting through the various iterations and trying to make sure we have as close to possible the history that he would have created had he been able to finish the task. Make sure we're working with the family and other interested parties with the ultimate object to publish this, make it available as a resource. So just a word or so about what we're doing and so forth. So
Brother Dave's here. He wants to see everybody before anybody leaves. We're getting him in the door right here. So hang around a minute. Brother Dave.
Okay. Let this side of the room tell me stories in the next few minutes. Shall we start? Oh, these people, here we are.
I'm Bill Barron. Worked with Don Bell and CZK and Bull and Rob and Magic. So we go back, and Joey Roberts and I work together. I see so many people. Brother John, we go back. Whoa, to the 70s. Frank excuse me, Frank Lewis, and I worked together. Matter of fact, Frank had to let me go one day early on my 2-week notice to leave for a situation that happened. I was on the air. Bill, Frank Lewis. Don't worry about that last day of your notice. You can just go on to the next one. And I tried to explain. He said, I've already had a talk with Fox. Of course, they didn't fire him. He was too popular at the time. And thank you for having us down here.
Thank you, Bill. That's a great story, man. I'll tell you what, we had some good times at API and I-95 as well, didn't we? Absolutely, absolutely. Well, the continuing saga that is the Alabama Historical Radio Society Legends Luncheon is continuing today. It's always different, and it's such an honor and thrill to have all of the people that are associated with this great society do what they do for us every year, and for that we'll be eternally grateful to you guys, man, because it's like to bring all of these people together, and we got another one, and finally made it. I'm glad to say that I'm proud to introduce to you the man that is Brother Dave, the Birmingham Brave, the man that's never done nobody no wrong on no radio station that he knows of nowhere. Brother Dave White. Dave, worked at Live Radio together and several others, man. It's great to have you, buddy.
Oh, it's great to be here. What these people have done for radio is amazing. I didn't think after we got off the air anybody cared. Now you got probably everything we came over, any kind of speaker, and y'all have done a fantastic job. And I don't know. You wanted some stories.
Monkey story. Well, hey, this is the storyteller. This guy. He was incredible on the radio, but if you want to hear a story told right, Brother Dave can do it.
The monkey story.
The monkey story. I really don't want to start off with the monkey story. I wanted to sort of explain. I can tell a few Duke stories. But a lot of these stories that come up, Bob and I talked about it, a lot of these I can't tell. I really can't use the names. They have to be changed to protect the innocent. A lot of those ladies married well later on in life. And I just can't bring those names up. But, we'll try to do it that way. But I think one of the funniest things that I ever had happen to me, it was early on. Where was I? I was working in Bessemer at the mighty WYAM, Wham Radio, on the beautiful banks of Valley Creek and half the time in it. And I went to work one morning. I was doing mornings, and I was living way across town. And it was raining terribly bad. And I get in there and turn the transmitter on, get on the air, and the rain gets worse. It just gets worse. And I go look out the window, and the doghouse is almost underwater. And I'm like, whoa, this isn't looking good. And then it keeps raining and raining. And then I get a call from, I can't think of the chief engineer's name, but he called me and asked me what the conditions were. So I told him, it's getting pretty bad out. He said, well, you need to go turn the transmitter off. He said, I'm sure water's coming in the back, because they had a water line halfway between the floor and the ceiling of how deep it had gotten there before. Instead of moving, which would have been, what I would do, they just dried it out and refurnished it, 3 times. And they're still there, I think. Well, it got so bad that water was coming in the building. So I called the chief engineer back. I said, water's coming in the building, it's right around my feet. He said, well, have you turned the transmitter off yet? I said, I didn't really want to go in there. All this water, that transmitter is not going to do well. So I went in there at his insistence. And it was one of those old red on, black off, push button transmitter. And there was a broom right there at the door when you went in. And I wasn't going to walk in there near that transmitter. So I practiced, my dart throwing with a broom. And I actually hit that black button. Boom, it went off. Okay, my job's done. So I was going to go leave, where I'd parked my car up on a little platform outside the storage building. There was water all around, I couldn't get to. So I go back in, and the phone rings, and it's the fire department. And I went, oh God, what now? And it's just me in this whole building by myself. So back in those days, I was walking on crutches. And I said, I don't think I can get out of here. He said, well, we've launched the boats. We're coming to get you. Well, that didn't make me feel real good. I got to get in a boat on crutches in the pouring down rain and maybe a tornado. And that tower was, it just, I thought it was Armageddon coming. So finally they get me in the boat, take me out of there. And then the water went down a little while, I went back out my car. And that was my introduction. I think it was the first work of the month that I worked at WYAM. I said, this is going to be great. But another story that goes with WYAM, this was really funny. To me, what?
Chairs flashing.
I guess the fire department's coming out here.
That's the BS button.
Hey, well, it didn't take on you, did it?
I wore it out. I don't know how you turn it off.
Now you got your part.
There we go. Anyway, I get to do a live broadcast. This was the early days. This was like 1970. I was a kid back then. And so we go out to do a live broadcast at a brand new gas station opened up. Everybody's got to be there. So we're set up, we're broadcasting. And There's a guy that was standing kind of eyeballing me, across the parking lot, and he'd get a little closer, get a little closer. Finally he came up to me. He said, which one of them are you? I said, well, I'm Brother Dave. How you doing? Nice to meet you. Are you really Brother Dave? I said, well, yeah. I swear, me and my wife listen to you every morning. You don't sound crippled on the radio. I said, well, I try not to, best I can. He said, you ought to tell folks about it. They might take up a collection for it. And so I gave him a couple of records and finally got rid of him. But that was one of my funny stories for getting into the business. And now I think
Monkey.
They want to hear the monkey story.
Here we go. Record it.
Well, now I was not there for the monkey story, but a good fellow that I got to be friends with when I worked at WBOK with Bob Berry, several other suspects, was a guy named Curly Fagan, and I know you've all probably heard the name. He had a rockabilly band in the 50s, Curly Fagan and the Bob Kings, and he was Joe Rumore's runner. He would leave midfield every morning, go to the Birmingham post office, pick up Joe's mail, take it by Joe's studio, drop it off, come back to VOK, and he would run the board while Joe was on. Well, we used to sit and talk a lot when Joe was on, because I came on after Joe went off. And he's talking about the old days at WBOK. It was like just a show palace, because they had a big studio, and you could bring people in and sit down and watch the DJs work. And so they had the carnival come through town, or the whatever, circus, yeah, maybe a circus. Well, they were promoting the circus everywhere. So they come out to WBOK, and I think Joe was still broadcasting from the studios then before he went to his own studio. Well, they brought this little Italian guy that was a monkey grinder. And he's walking around there with this little monkey, Geppetto or whatever his name was. And, he's walking up to people and holding out his hand. And, they'll give him a quarter and he'll tip his hat. Had him trained well, and they give him a peanut. Well, everybody's just loving this little monkey. This monkey's just so cute. And the grinders just grinding away. And I wish I could do it in Curly's voice, but because Curly had such a unique voice. But somehow the monkey got off the chain. Well, the monkey was like just happy. He was going up to everybody and climbing over chairs, and then all of a sudden the monkey disappears. Nobody can find Geppetto. Where is Geppetto? Well, the little Italian guy, he's kind of freaking out. This is his income. This is his livelihood. And he don't have eyes on him. And all of a sudden, boom! Everything goes dark. Everything goes dark. Well, people get to running around. What's happened? What's going on? Well, one of the engineers went into the back and found out what was going on. Apparently, Geppetto thought everything looked pretty good down here. I wonder what things look like up there. And he just happened to be in the transmitter room. And BOK was built out of, I think, Quonset huts or something from the Army. And they had to sink them like 5 feet in the ground, And they were sturdy building. Well, to run the transmission wire, line, or whatever, they had to cut a hole in the I-beam. And they had it balanced on a little piece of plexiglass. Well, that served the purpose. Until Geppetto, who was hanging on the beam, grabs the wire. Well, he instantly becomes a crispy critter. Burns him alive. He's gone. And so they've got to go out there to explain to the little Italian guy, you don't have a monkey anymore. But he wanted to see his monkey. So they got to take him back there, and the guy said, you can't have your monkey until we go off the air. We're not cutting it off again. So there's this fried critter hanging from this wire, and then they had to cut a deal with the little Italian guy to get him another monkey, but you know he didn't like the deal because they were just going to buy him a brand new monkey. He wanted an Italian monkey. So that's the monkey story from WBOK, and I was trying to think of another story about Duke Rumore that I could tell. Not many I could, but Duke was probably one of the best at double entendres I'd ever seen. I mean, he could say it one way, but everybody took it the other. And there was a joke going around at the time about the song called "Cut Across Shorty," and the joke was that Shorty was much more of a man than anybody else on the baseball team, because after he passed second base, his belt broke and his pants fell down. And this lady on the side of the field is yelling, "Cut across, Shorty, cut across." Well, it's more graphic than that, but Duke had told the joke to me, and I laughed. And I said, I bet you $10 you can't tell that on the air. He said, I bet you I can, baby. I bet you I can. Yeah, baby. Well, friends, there was this boy named Shorty. Now, Shorty played baseball. And he hit a homer, and he is running around the base, and he is passing second, and all of a sudden his belt breaks, and his pants fall down. And the whole crowd sees the likes of something they've never seen before. And a woman yells, "Cut across, Shorty, cut across." And then he starts the record of "Cut Across Shorty." And it plays for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds. And he jumps back in, he said, "Well, friends, it seems like the Shorty's belt broke." So he got that part in. But the greatest story I ever heard, I was part of, and they had Duke broadcasting live from Sears, and they gave Duke about 100 foot of microphone cable, which was probably 75 feet too much. You want to keep him contained. Well, he wasn't having that. He was broadcasting there, talking to everybody, and he goes over to the boat department, and he's talking about, "Well, friends, you get a boat down here. You have the best boat in Alabama, and they'll even give you 2 free oars, and you always got to have an oar on your boat." And he would laugh, and everybody was just howling about it. And then he walks over to the men's clothing department. "Oh, friends, they got suits on sale here. You can get a suit, 2 pair of pants." "Yes, sir. And some of these got zippers on the side, if you happen to be a swinger." And I'm back at the station running the board, so I'm just like dying. I'm just dying laughing. Then he gets to the ladies' lingerie department. Well, this is when the phones lit up. Well, friends, we here at Sears, I'm in the ladies' lingerie department, and I just noticed this sign. It says, ladies' pantyhose, 3 pair for $1. Now that's a bargain, friends. Because you know, these pantyhose are next to the best thing in the world. Ain't that right, Brother Dave? Well, by now, I'm howling. And I'm Mike. So that's another story of the Duke. And I think Bob Bear remembers that one. Yeah. Yeah. And then the Sammy's commercials. You know, he would do the Sammy's commercials with a bump and a bump and a bump. And
They're always looking for good dancers.
yeah, always looking for dancers. Oh yeah, and it was a real estate company at the time, Viva Chumbler, and I think, Duke, that was his account. And he said, don't forget, friends, Miss Viva says, get a lot while you're young. And he would do these over and over every day. I mean, it was just, I used to go in there early just to listen to him on the last 30 minutes. So he was good. So that's about all the key stories that I can tell. So who's next here?
Did you want to read a couple of numbers here for people to get their free ratings?
Okay. He told me there would be no work involved.
You're going to be paid for this. You can use my tickets. I win.
Where's the glass? My wife's got the glass. Let's see. 618 724.
Thank you, sir.
618 724.
I just gave it to Pete. He gave it to me. What am I, an idiot?
618 725. And 618.
That's your wife. This is
Now we're good.
Don't keep those.
Yeah, keep those. Those are already in there.
That wasn't planned, folks.
Oh, somebody else draw. How about you drawing a couple of tickets?
We need a state lottery.
Oh,
Up and up.
on the up and up. I'll just be the pronouncer.
All right. These are door prizes. We got 2 new old stock radios.
What's the first prize going out, Steve?
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
You get a SpongeBob SquarePants. Okay, he did.
This one.
There's the winner. All right, here's the winner. 618. And my favorite number, friends, 69 6.
For a child's radio.
For a child's radio. That was the Duke's favorite number. 69, baby.
618 696.
Yep. Winner right there. You got you. SpongeBob
SquarePants radio. Number 2.
Number 2. For the winner of a, what is that?
Little puppy. Cute puppy.
It's a very authentic packaging. Shower radio, cute puppy. I know you got a joke about that.
Yep, I can't tell. He bites you.
Sturdy.
618 694.
He drew it. No, I think it's.
Yeah, give it to him. He did work hard for that.
Yeah, you didn't look. He didn't look in the jar, did he? Okay.
All right, here you go, Pete. There we go. Winning tickets.
Thank you so much. Everyone enjoyed your stories, and save some for next time. I think that we'll probably need to call the proceedings to a close. If there's anybody else who wants to visit for a little bit, I think we'll be around a little more. We'll put you to work cleaning up. And again, thank everyone for their participation, and especially those who have come from so far to be among us. And we'll see some of you very quickly, and some of you we'll see next year, I hope. So again, thank you and good day.